Back in 2023, I made an NHL recap for the entire season, plus the playoffs, plus the draft. And this year, we're going to do the exact same thing, except we're going to throw in a little bit of a wrench. I'm also going to go through some notable trades, as well as some notable free agent signings. And a quick note, if you enjoy the hockey content, I will be having a much more hockey-centered ASMR channel for the 2024-2025 season. It's going to be linked in the description. It's called Between the Pipes ASMR. This will still mean that this channel gets some hockey content, but over there it'll just be a lot more common, kind of like instant reactions to games. But back to this video, disclaimer, I did not watch every team, so I may not have focused on the biggest stories from each team, but I tried to hit all the right notes. Starting off with the Pacific Division, and going in order from least points to most. Now, quick stretch. San Jose Sharks were in dead last of their division, of their conference, and of the league. They went 19-54-6. They started the season going 0-11, and it was quite the spectacle because at the same time the Edmonton Oilers were on a crazy bad run as well. But San Jose got their first win on November 7th. Quickly addressing the fact that I'm looking down. This, like last year's video, is my iPad with all the notes just kind of keep me on track, because we all know your boy can ramble. However, all the pain was not for nothing. They ended up getting the first overall pick in the 2024 entry draft, eventually drafting Macklin Celebrini, the consensus number one overall pick. And we'll talk about that later in the video when we talk about the draft, but that was a monumental turn in the San Jose Sharks' favor. And also good news, when I was writing my notes, Will Smith had just signed his entry-level contract. So now they have Macklin Celebrini at number 1, signed to an ELC, and Will Smith number 4 overall from a previous draft, I believe 2023, signed as well. Now, the Anaheim Ducks were mostly irrelevant. It's a little harsh, but they went 27-50-5. And with another top 3 pick in this year's draft, coupled with their young core, this team is starting to get out of their rebuild. Now, one of the bigger problems I see with Anaheim is while they have really, really solid forward prospects and a couple good defensive prospects, John Gibson is getting older. Now, they do have their backup goalie, who I am blanking on his name right now, but he has played fantastic in this season. And one of the things I want to talk about as I look up what that goalie's name was is at 3rd overall this year, the Anaheim Ducks selected Lucas Dostal is who I was thinking of. They selected Beckett Senek, which was an absolute surprise. I believe Central Rankings had him somewhere near 11, and basically that was the meme out of the draft this year, was his face just being like, Pog, I did not think I was going to go this high, but hey, I'm happy to be here. And he was. Next up, Seattle missed the playoffs and was a bit underwhelming compared to last season. Last season they made their way into the second round, and this season they were right below NHL 500, going 34, 35, and 13. The team was led in points by Jared McCann, and the team is still rebuilding, so we will see where they go from here. We have to remember this was their third season, so it's not too big of a deal that it was a down season, as long as we see progression. Much like Seattle, the Calgary Flames finished just below 500, and they were a bit underwhelming, especially from where they were a few seasons ago. They went 38, 39, and 5. Now, Yegor Sharangovich had 31 goals this year, continuing his good play from New Jersey, and I continue to believe that that was a pretty decent trade on both parts of New Jersey and Calgary. Now, this was an interesting stat that I pulled up. The gap between Vegas and Calgary was 18 points. The Calgary Flames were out of the playoffs by 18 points. Speaking of Vegas, everybody hated Vegas this year for putting Mark Stone on long-term injury reserve with a lacerated spleen just before the trade deadline. Now, to be fair, the timing was set to bring him back just before the playoffs, so a lot of people thought it was just another attempt at cap circumvention. And quickly explaining, a player on LTIR does not have their cap hit count against the team until they return. Further explaining, the cap doesn't count for anything in the playoffs, so if Vegas took on an extra $9.5 million at the trade deadline, and Mark Stone came back only for the playoffs, they could be $9.5 million over the cap in the playoffs, which they eventually did, but it didn't help this time, losing to Dallas in the first round. The LA Kings traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois last season, giving up Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, Rasmussen Kupari, and a second-round pick in the 2024 draft. In 82 games, PLD had 40 points and found himself on the fourth line at points in the season, which the 40 points wouldn't be bad unless he just so happened to be paid $8.5 million on long-term money. Now, when I wrote this, PLD had not been traded to the Washington Capitals, which I will talk about in the trade section of this video, but he was traded for Darcy Kemper to the Washington Capitals. But talking about the actual Kings this season, I just thought that was a very, very important story for their season. The Kings' season was defined in the playoffs when they lost in 5 games to the Edmonton Oilers. Getting rid of that depth really hurt. And Gabe Vilardi and Alex Iafallo and Rasmussen Kupari all had really decent to good seasons over in Winnipeg, so that one hurt. It didn't help Winnipeg in the playoffs, but now the only problem I see with this team is the aging of Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty. Those are not easily replaced players, but they do have some really good prospects, especially Quinton Byfield in their lineup. I say Quinton Byfield because recently he signed I believe it was a 5-year, $6.25 million extension. I have it written down in the free agent section, and we will talk about that after the season recap. The Edmonton Oilers' big story this year was starting the season 2-9-1 with Jay Woodcroft. In their first 12 games, Connor McDavid had an abysmal 10 points. And you see me smiling because to most players, 10 points is not seen as the end of the world. But for Connor McDavid, that is absolutely Apocalypse Now, World War Z type traumatic experience. His points picked up around November 20th with 2 points in an outing against the Florida Panthers, which, if you know anything about the playoffs, interesting. They won the Heritage Classic against Calgary and things started to look like they were on the up and up. Starting November 24th, they went on an 8-game winning streak, and then starting December 21st, they went on a 16-game winning streak that was ruined by the All-Star break. After the slow start, McDavid nearly won the Art Ross Trophy, but was ultimately left in the dust by Nikita Kucherov. McDavid ended with 132 points, which put him firmly in third place behind Kucherov and McKinnon. And when it came to the Edmonton Oilers this year, once their new head coach came in, it seemed like they were playing a better brand of hockey. But Zach Hyman also had a career year with 54 goals, 77 points in total. Leon Draisaitl was himself and continues to dominate the league, 41 goals, 65 assists, for a meager 106 points, which is a down year for him. The team went all the way to Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final, after being down 3-0 in the finals. So, I have a lot of respect for Edmonton going into next season. I have a lot of respect for McDavid, always have. I have more respect for Hyman and Nugent Hopkins, and especially with Jeff Skinner. As a Buffalo fan, I got to see Kyle Okposo win the Cup this year, and Brandon Montour and several others. And next year, I could very well end up seeing Jeff Skinner raise the Stanley Cup with all of his 5'8" self. And I say that as someone that's... The Vancouver Canucks surprised us all by winning the Pacific Division 50-23-9 for 109 points, and Brock Besser really did return to his former glory with 40 goals this season. Quinn Hughes had a monster year on defense with 75 assists, which is crazy, and a player who people wanted traded last year in JT Miller had 37 goals, 66 assists for 103 points. I really wish my Penguins had pulled the trigger on that trade right about now. Thatcher Demko did Thatcher Demko things with a .245 goals against average and a .918 save percentage, putting him in the race for the Vezina Trophy. Elias Pettersson was no slouch this year either, racking up 34 goals, 55 assists for 89 points, which is 7 points above point per game. I said poor like I was Gru. Point per game. They went the distance with Edmonton in the second round, falling in 7 games after a heroic rise from Seelovs, their backup goalie. And that was quite the spectacle to watch. I was following along over on the Steve Dangle podcast on all those live streams. Shout out Cassie. Absolute legend right there. And if you didn't know, the Steve Dangle podcast and the Hockey Guy are two people that I absolutely love. If you're looking for channels that are all about hockey, those are two great opportunities. Getting into the second half of the West, though, we get to the Central Division, starting with Chicago was terrible by design. However, Connor Bedard was spectacular for a rookie, netting a team high of goals and assists with 22 goals, 39 assists, 61 points in 68 games. He did get injured, but he was a very, very good rookie, especially by NHL standards. Arizona the team on this jersey. I'm wearing my reverse retro Arizona jersey right now. See how far I can get that up into the camera. There we go. They continued to play out of LSU. They continued to play out of ASU. This year, they finally lost their team. The Coyotes officially relocated to Salt Lake City, Utah this year, and right now they have their Summer Analytics Challenge going on. If you want to get involved in that, I would look into it. They do not have an official name yet, so they are called the Utah Hockey Club, and they will continue to be named that through the 2024-2025 season. One of my favorite names on the docket, and I've seen this a lot from people, is the Utah Yeti. The team was most active in the postseason with trades and free agents, and we'll talk about it later. But things are looking good for Salt Lake City to have a solid team this year. We get to an unfortunate situation that made the best of what they had. The Minnesota Wild took a step back this year, but considering they had $14.7 million in dead cap, that's not that surprising. Next season, roughly $13 million of that will once again be unusable. Kirill the Thrill had another fantastic year, netting 46 goals, 50 assists for 96 points. And the next closest teammate to him was Matt Boldy at 69 points. Nice. The team has some really good young talent. Matt Boldy, Marco Rossi, Brock Faber, and the future is very bright for Minnesota, especially once this dead cap is gone, which is right around when their young guys will be looking for those extensions. St. Louis narrowly missed the playoffs with 92 points. Their young guys led the way with Robert Thompson getting 86 points and Jordan Kyrou with a team-leading 31 goals. Speaking about Jordan Kyrou, he was booed in St. Louis this year early in the season for his extremely poor play. He's not a great defensive guy, so when he wasn't hitting on offense is when people started to get angry. All of that culminating when he ended up crying during an interview, which was seen on both sides of the fences different ways, and he eventually started playing better after that in the offensive zone. So hopefully they can continue to progress. Hopefully Jordan Kyrou continues his great play. And the Nashville Predators are the next team, and the first team in NHL history to have a U2 concert taken away from them due to poor play. And it wasn't even that poor of play. They had lost like the previous 2 games, and the general manager Barry Trotz was just like, nope, the entire team is getting this canceled. They were going to all go see it at the Dome in Vegas. And the team nearly eclipsed 100 points. But unfortunately, not only did the players lose the U2 concert, but also the staff. So that is the big unfortunate part. The staff don't make millions of dollars quite like the players. And some of the players don't make millions either. So I really do feel bad because they did not deserve that. But on the other side of things, Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi continue to be fantastic players. Forsberg had 48 goals, 46 assists for 94 points, and Roman Josi had 23 goals, 62 assists, 85 points on the season as a defenseman. The team was all around solid with a good younger core complementing the veteran talent. They did prime themselves for quite the run in the next 2 to 3 years in free agency this year, signing guys like Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos, Brady Shea, but this year they lost in the first round to Vancouver. The Colorado Avalanche had the second best point producer in the NHL in Nathan MacKinnon. Big Mac, the Mac Truck, Mac Daddy, whatever you want to call him. And Mikko Rantanen was no slouch either. He continues his dominant run with 42 goals, 62 assists, 104 points. Cale Makar had 21 goals, 69 assists, nice, 90 points as a defenseman. The team traded defenseman Bowen Byram in a 1-for-1 deal right around the trade deadline time for Buffalo Sabres legend Casey Mittelstadt. And he had 10 points in 18 games as a second-line center. He was a solidified second-line center. They needed that second-line center. So a solid trade on both sides. Maybe Bowen Byram grows into a better player, but Casey Mittelstadt helps them right now when they need it. The team lost in the second round to the Dallas Stars in the playoffs. The Winnipeg Jets are still having attendance issues, even though the team was second in the Central this year. Winnipeg is a smaller market, so if everybody isn't going to see them, then there's immediately a problem. It's really unfortunate, but it's just kind of how the cookie crumbles in this situation. The team re-signed at the beginning of the season assistant captain Mark Stone and starting goaltender and Vezina winner Connor Hellebuyck for $8.5 million per year for 7 years each. Scheifele led the team with a respectable 72 points, while Hellebuyck had a very respectable, one might even say elite, .921 save percentage and a .239 goals against average. The team lost in 5 games to the Colorado Avalanche in the first round, and Connor Hellebuyck was a big reason why. He was terrible. An .870 save percentage in the playoffs. That is not a Vezina caliber at all. Finally, in the West, we get to the Dallas Stars. And the Young Guns really led this team. Jason Robertson had 29 goals, 51 assists for 80 points. Wyatt Johnson led the team in 69 goals, he wishes. With goals in 32 goals, 33 assists, 65 points. ASMR Scotty legend for my 2015 redraft, Roope Hintz, had a respectable 30 goals, 35 assists for 65 points. And the veteran presence mixed with the younger guys was a huge asset for the team. Joe Pavelski was still strong with 27 goals, 40 assists, 67 points, and Matt Duchene having 25 goals, 40 assists, 65 points, and tying Wyatt Johnson and Roope Hintz. We may not have gotten a full season of him, but Logan Stankoven was spectacular. 14 points in 24 games as a rookie. They were able to beat the reigning Stanley Cup champions, the Vegas Golden Knights, in 7 games in the first round, and after the playoffs ended, Joe Pavelski, after 20 seasons, officially retired from the NHL, unfortunately without a Stanley Cup. For the Eastern Conference, let me start by saying the Atlantic Division is an absolute monster. Every single team is either good now and poised for a good run for a while, or they are up and coming and will be contenders that will miss the playoffs. Unfortunately, 4 at most 5 teams in the East in one division can make it in. In the Atlantic might claim all 5 this season, who knows? But we're going to start with the Metro Division. And every time I think of saying the words Metro now, I just think of Metro Boomin's openings to all of his songs, where he goes, Metro, but he does it in a higher pitch voice. First up in the East, we've got the Columbus Blue Jackets, though. This year, the team had 2 coaches. The summer coach, Mike Babcock, and the rest of the year's coach in Dean Evison. The team finished in last place in the East with 66 points, 10 points back of the second worst team, the Montreal Canadiens. They went 27, 43, and 12. This year, they ended up having the number 4 draft pick, and slowly but surely the team is improving. The team's true value is in its future. Their draft picks and young guys will continue to get older, improve the team's overall record. They're still not a playoff team, but in 2 years, if the cards fall correctly, maybe they can sneak into a wild card spot. We will just have to see, especially with a team that right now is last in the East. The New Jersey Devils, though, were plagued by injuries this season. Unlike last season, the team missed the playoffs by 10 points. Jack Hughes, their first-line center and franchise cornerstone, missed 20 games due to injury. Count it, 20 games. He still notched 74 points in 62 games, so a full season of that is scary. Nico Hischier, who is an underrated 200-foot player, and basically the second-line center and second cornerstone of the franchise, missed 11 games. He still had a respectable 67 points in 71 games. And as I was going through, I was trying to say how many players missed how many games, and I realized how many players missed how many games. So I ended up putting the only 3 players that played the entirety of the season. That means they played 82 games. And those players are as follows: Jesper Bratt, Luke Hughes, who looks like he's going to be easily a top 4 defenseman in the future, even though his plus-minus wasn't great this year. Dawson Mercer is number 3. And that's it. This is definitely a season to forget. There's not much you could do about injuries, and a healthy New Jersey team is at least a wild card, but most likely a solidified playoff team, especially in the Metro Division. The Philadelphia Flyers were in the hunt this year, ultimately falling short post-All-Star break. And to validate this point, I went back and saw the last few months of the season. In March, the team went 4-7-3. In April, the team went 2-4-1, bringing the total of the final 2 months of the season to 6-11-4. Now, bringing in veteran coach John Tortorella was a great move, and he seemed to get the most out of his team and get them into a prime spot. However, this year did seem a bit out of nowhere. The team continues to have a decent future, but we will see. The highly touted Matvei Michkov recently arrived in the U.S. and will play for the team next season, so that is huge for them. And also, this happened after I wrote my notes, but Travis Konechny also just got locked up long term. The Pittsburgh Penguins were surprisingly quiet most of the season, with new president and general manager Kyle Dubas from the Toronto Maple Leafs. He made his one big trade with San Jose for Erik Karlsson, and this season the team was solid, but around the trade deadline they traded away Jake Gensel. Crosby is still amazing, having 42 goals, 52 assists for 94 points. The problem is the next player in points was Evgeny Malkin with 67. Erik Karlsson was pretty good in his first year, but nowhere near the Norris level of last year. The biggest problem with this team, though, is was their power play with an abysmal 15.27%. League average power play was 20.98%. They were over 5.5% under league average as a team that just barely missed the playoffs. They were in the hunt, eventually losing the spot to the Washington Capitals. If the Penguins have league average power play and don't regress next season, the playoffs are certainly still in view. The Washington Capitals, speaking of, I was just talking about them, got into a playoff at a skidding pace, having a minus 37 goal differential and still sneaking in the last wild card spot. I don't usually like to say, negative parts, but wow. The minus 37, I think, was an NHL record for worst plus minus to make it into the playoffs since they started tracking this stat. The real story with the Capitals is Ovechkin. He had a slow start to the season, notching only 8 goals in the first half. In the second half, though, the beast awoke, and he ended the season with 31 goals. He is now only 41 goals away from tying Wayne Gretzky's goal record, which is 894 in his career. In the postseason, they traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois for Darcy Kemper. Hopefully, Pierre-Luc Dubois can help with Ovechkin and getting him started earlier in the season. And maybe Ovi will return to a 40-goal pace, perhaps even eclipsing the 41 goals needed to tie Wayne Gretzky, and ultimately breaking the record potentially in this upcoming season. The New York Islanders ended the season very strong, going 8-1-1 in their last 10. They were third in the Metro, but they lost in 5 to the Carolina Hurricanes in the playoffs. One thing the Islanders must address is their bottom 6, in my opinion. The team overall has some good pieces, but the supporting cast isn't quite there to make a Stanley Cup push. The one thing about the Islanders, though, they can never be counted out. This is due to their strong defensive presence, respectable offensive presence, and fantastic goaltending with Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov. Former Colorado Avalanche starting goaltender Semyon Varlamov. I could see Noah Dobson getting Norris votes in the future if the team goes on a good run in the regular season. I think he is an incredibly underrated defenseman. Now, he's gotten some good respect in recent times, so that is good. But I could see him becoming like the Alexander Barkov of defensemen in the fact that he's so underrated. Islander fans, you know what you have. For me, though, he is a top-tier defenseman in the league, like I said. He is probably at least top 10, if not top 7, best defenseman in the league. The Carolina Hurricanes had another second-round exit, and at the trade deadline, they traded for Jake Gensel this year. They went 52, 23, and 7 with 111 points. Think if they only had 11 points, the absolute stories we could tell. They had a fantastic regular season overall. Sebastian Aho continues to be a great 200-foot player. Svechnikov was hurt for 23 games, but notched a respectable 52 points in 59 games. In the postseason, Martin Necas asked to be traded, but at this time he still remains with the club. This is a big part I want to talk about. The Carolina Hurricanes goalie situation. Pyotr Kochetkov played half the season and proved he is a true number 1 starting goaltender in the league. In the post, it blew my mind in last year's postseason that they were thinking about trading him because he was their number 3 goalie. They had Frederik Andersen, Antti Ranta, and Pyotr Kochetkov. And it was after their playoff run where Kochetkov had a decent running after Anderson and Ranta both got injured. Now, I could go on for days about that, but I really wish, like the Sabres or the Maple Leafs or my Penguins at my third favorite team, would have picked this guy up. I feel like if they truly wanted to shop him around, 31 other teams should have been interested. But Freddie Anderson also had a great string of games with a .932 save percentage. It wasn't in nearly as many games as Kochetkov. Weirdly enough, the team reminds me of a better version of the Islanders. No offense, Islander fans. The only problem with the team is their future. A lot of contracts ended this year, and they're coming due next year, and the year after that. These next 2 years, though, especially, they've got a lot of UFAs coming to the table. So they need to address that as quickly as possible. Finally, the last team in the Metro, but the first team is the New York Rangers, who won the division with 114 points. Panarin continues his reign of terror with a monster 120-point season, nearly missing 50 goals by one. He scored 49 goals. Igor Shesterkin continues to amaze this season, boasting a .913 save percentage, which is actually low for him, so that just speaks to how amazing of a goaltender he actually is. The team had two big stories this year. First, and my personal favorite, the return of vintage Jonathan Quick, who ended the season with a .911 save percentage. Now, I had a few favorite goalies in the 2010s. By far, the first one was Marc-Andre Fleury. The second was easily Carey Price. And the third was Jonathan Quick with the Los Angeles Kings. The three of them were absolutely fantastic. They were the S-tier goalies of the 2010s, just like, Shesterkin and Vasilevsky and Sorokin now is coming through there. And I'm blanking on Dallas's goalie's name, but he is also fantastic. But I love the fact that he returned to that glory. I know Dallas fans are about to super get on me for that. But the second story was the Rempire State Building. Rempire State Building, Matt Rempe. The dude came in and just started throwing hands. In the off-season, he is training as both a hockey player and a boxer, apparently. He seems like the next great enforcer. If he can get even better at hockey portion, then he is definitely a great candidate for enforcer of the future. The team made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they lost to the eventual Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers, in 6 games. Moving on to the Atlantic Division, the team I spoke very highly of at the start of the Eastern Conference. The Montreal Canadiens had a solid overall improvement from last season. They had 68 points in the season standings last year, and they had 76 points this year. Slavkovsky looks to be establishing himself in the league more and more, especially in the second half of the season this year. I feel like he had an okay start to the season, but he started to really shine in the second half. Nick Suzuki had another great season, 77 points in 82 games, and the future is bright for the Canadiens with all their young talent. They've got Arbor Xhekaj, Nick Suzuki's pretty young, Slavkovsky's pretty young, Cole Caulfield, or Cole Caulfield, is very young. Caden Gooley is very young. There's a plethora of young talent on this core, including Caden Primo, the goalie. So, There's a lot to be excited about in Montreal. The Ottawa Senators are next, and they dealt with a few different issues this year, receiving a few less points in the standings last year. And a point to note about that, the entire division keeps getting better or not falling off, so some teams will lose points. In Ottawa's case, it was a few things. Losing Shane Pinto for 41 games due to letting his friend place bets on his gambling account hurt. Shane Pinto is an excellent player. On a bad day, he's a third liner, like high third liner, but this dude is easily top 6 and solidly on that second line. Tim Stützle didn't have quite the same year, but still had a respectable 70 points in 75 games. It certainly wasn't the 100 points in 82 from last year, but the whole team kind of took a little bit of a backtrack. Josh Norris, a very talented center, missed 32 games due to injury. He is another bona fide second-line center. They missed a top 2 defenseman in Thomas Chabot for 31 games. And overall, much like the New Jersey Devils in the Metro, the team's future looks bright. Only time will tell what that means in the Atlantic Division, in the stacked Atlantic Division. My favorite team, the Buffalo Sabres, took a definite step back as well, due majorly again to injury. Alex Tuch missed 7 games and didn't look like himself. Tage Thompson missed 11 games and dealt with a nagging injury all season. Half the season of Bowen Byram, Jack Quinn, and Matthias Samuelsson were the 2 biggest injuries. In my opinion, you're missing the defensive defenseman in Samuelsson and the goal scorer in Jack Quinn that was part of that absolutely elite line last year of Jack Quinn, Dylan Cousins up the middle, and JJ Peterka. The kid line is what I called it. I don't know what other people called it. If they did that too, it would make sense. They're young guys. They're new to the league still. But the future for Buffalo seems very bright. But they've got to put their money where their mouth is. The change to Lindy Ruff in the offseason should help the Sabres get into a true playoff contention this year. But who will they knock out? Our last non-playoff team is the Detroit Red Wings. They improved 11 points this year from 80 points to 91 points. And while I don't know much about Detroit from this year, I can say if their goaltending improves just a little bit, they would have challenged a playoff spot for sure. I think they really could have knocked Washington out of contention early on, getting somewhere between 95 points to 99 points if they had league average goaltending from their goalies. And the Cam Talbot signing should definitely help with that, giving Detroit a solid 3 goalie rotation. Getting into our first playoff team in the Atlantic, the Tampa Bay Lightning, starting with MVP runner-up Nikita Kucherov. That's Art Ross Trophy winner Nikita Kucherov. That's NHL All-Star Game heel Nikita Kucherov, who had 44 goals, 100 assists, 144 points. The team is still solid and was solidly in the playoffs picture by the end of the season. The team, this year the franchise lost longtime great Steven Stamkos after an entire year of speculation, even going back about a year and a half, but really picking up before the season this year. The Lightning didn't want to talk to Stamkos till the season was done. Stamkos, all the way through up until free agency, wanted to be a Lightning for life. In Tampa, eventually let him walk to unrestricted free agency where he signed with Nashville. And then they signed Jake Gensel in his place, I believe for the exact amount of money that they were offering Stammer. And that Gensel signing should help bear some of the weight of losing Stamkos, but that is a all-time franchise guy, so no one can quite replace Stammer. Vasilevsky had a very mid-season, but he missed the beginning of the season with an injury. When first returning, he did not look like the Vasi we know and love, but he found his rhythm towards the end of the season. He looked very mortal, is the best way I can put it, when he first came back. But as the season went on, he started putting up more and more Vasilevsky-like performances. They had to rush him back, though, because the two goalies they had playing in his place were not giving them even league average goaltending. So, he had to race back. But on to my second favorite team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who had a solid regular season. I had a feeling it would be a good year with the last season's off-season additions. However, I thought Bertuzzi and Domi would have meant more in the playoffs. I knew there was a lot of speculation after the Bertuzzi and Domi signing and the Klingberg signing, and all of the signings Brad Treliving did after the season. I know Toronto fans were kind of skeptical, and Klingberg they were right about, but I was really interested to see what this team could do with Bertuzzi and Domi. I saw both of them as grit and grind players, and I thought the team would take a step back in the regular season, but they would look better as an overall well-rounded team. But I thought Bertuzzi and Domi would have pushed them at least to the second round easier this year. However, that is not how it happened. Austin Matthews had 69 goals. Nice. And William Nylander signed an extension for $11.5 million. The cap issues are not getting any better. I spent like 15 minutes last year ranting about this team's cap situation. Not gonna do it again this year. Basically, the cap situation got worse. Austin Matthews signed an extension for $13.25 that kicks in this year. Morgan Riley is officially on his $7.5-ish million contract, and now Willie will be on $11.5. That should be fun. That should be real fun. Crying in pain a little bit, but we survive. The team has potential this year, but my take is if they lose in the first round, this is a hot take, they should blow up the entire core. The cap situation is not doable, and this would be the final confirmation. We say that every year, but this year especially for me. The reason I say they should blow up the entire core in that situation is it just doesn't seem like, and this does come down to the Mitch Marner re-sign level, if they can get him at 10 million or at 11 million exactly, maybe. And if John Tavares takes like 6 million or 8 million, somewhere in that range, or 8.5 at the most, that's not bad. We need a discount there, John. But it seems to me like the players don't trust the team to utilize the cap space in a good way. And we're in a new regime now. This is the Brad Treliving era. This is not the Kyle Dubas era. I hope that Brendan Shanahan does not let Brad Treliving get thrown around like Kyle Dubas did when it comes to contract negotiations. I think Austin Matthews really should have signed for like 11.5. Willie should have been signed earlier in the season, to be fair, around that $8.5 million range. And then he just had a monster season and gained himself $3.5 million extra. But if your players don't trust the front office, it's a lot like the Buffalo Sabres were a couple years ago with Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart and Rasmus Ristolainen. As much as I loved that team and I love those players, I was on them to blow it up. Even though I know we had been in a rebuild for a while, I saw it wasn't working, I saw the players weren't trusting the front office, and I think the Toronto Maple Leafs could find themselves in a very similar situation, but even more dire in a way. Now, these are 4 all-time players. They are 4 potentially, probably, Hall of Famers, but the goal is not to have a great career as a team. The goal is to win a Stanley Cup as a team. And that is what the team should be focusing on. Overall, though, a great regular season, but like every hockey person will tell you, it comes down to the playoffs with this team. The Boston Bruins were way better than most of us expected this season after losing Bergeron and Krejci. I had a fast forward moment right there. Trent Frederick, Morgan Geekie, Matthew Poitras, and several others came in and helped tremendously. Poitras, especially in the beginning of the season. If I remember correctly, he was playing second or first line minutes for a while there. While the team lost Linus Ullmark, which is not an easy loss. We lost the goalie hug this year between Ullmark and Swayman. Super unfortunate. They did add a solid backup in Korpisalo, though, to fill his shoes. And I believe Korpisalo is going to have a bounce back year, getting close to league average in somewhere between 25 to 37 games, probably closer to 35 to 41 games, somewhere in there. And while the team definitely took a step back, they were still only 5 points shy of the President's Trophy. And last, but certainly not least, the Stanley Cup champions, Florida Panthers. They were 3rd in the East overall. And after making it to the Stanley Cup Finals last year and losing to Vegas, they made up for it this year by becoming Stanley Cup champions. Sam Reinhart had an amazing outing with 57 goals in the regular season. Former Sabre, by the way. Being the champion, there was not much they were lacking this year. Good regular seasons, good point producers, minus the fall off between Carter Verhaeghe and Sam Bennett, which was 72 points to Sam Bennett's 41. Yikes. But apparently it didn't matter. Good defense, though, and good goaltending, with Sergei Bobrovsky having a .915 save percentage. And overall, just good team play. Big time shout out to the front office for building such an amazing squad. That Matthew Tkachuk deal looks better and better every day now that that Stanley Cup is Florida Panthers' possession for at least one year. Only time will tell, though, with the subtractions and additions, if they can do it again. Brandon Montour was a big loss, former Sabre, by the way. And overall, Florida, fantastic team. Really big shout out to Kyle Okposo. My 2 hopes for Stanley Cup champions were Casey Middlestat with the Colorado Avalanche and Kyle Okposo with the Florida Panthers. Dude was 36. I really thought he deserved it. He always stuck with the Sabres, and he was on the Islanders when they weren't super good either. But great career, Okposo. I'd love to see him re-sign in Buffalo if he does not retire. But we will see. Buffalo does have a lot of young guys coming up. And moving on to the playoffs, I just want to read basically the playoff brackets. Starting in the West, round 1, we had Dallas winning in 7 games over Vegas. We had Winnipeg losing in 5 games to Colorado. We had Vancouver beating Nashville in a tough 6-game series. I followed Adam Wild along with the SDP with the live streams with that series. And then 4-1, Edmonton beats the Kings. In round 1 of the Eastern Conference, Florida takes down Tampa Bay in 5 games. Boston narrowly escapes blowing a 3-0 lead, winning in Game 7. The New York Rangers absolutely dominated the Capitals, winning 4-0 with the sweep. And the Carolina Hurricanes beat the Islanders in 5 games. One thing to note about the Lightning is they remind me a lot of the Pittsburgh Penguins after their back-to-back Stanley Cup wins. I've been on that for a while, a couple years now, after they lost in the finals, the 3rd year of making it in a row. I genuinely thought they were cooked, and a couple of first-round exits later, it still seems that way. Now, they have a much better path, a much better future than the Penguins do right now. They've integrated young players with veterans and a lot of middle-aged players as well, where the Penguins are on the higher side of the age scale. They're one of the older teams in the league, and they're locked up with their old guys. Old. But in the Western Conference, in round 2, Dallas beats Colorado Avalanche in 6 games. Also in the West, Vancouver pushes Edmonton to 7 games, but loses in Game 7. In the East, Florida beats Boston in 6 games, and New York Rangers beat Carolina in 6 games. 3 of the 4 second-round series went to 6 games. All but Vancouver and Edmonton had to ruin it. But I commend the Vancouver Canucks for their amazing season. In the Western Conference Finals, Edmonton continues the 6-game narrative by winning in 6 against the Dallas Stars. In the Eastern Conference, once again in 6 games, the Florida Panthers beat the New York Rangers in 6. And finally, the Stanley Cup Finals between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. The Florida Panthers got out to an early lead, winning the first 3 games, but then losing the next 3 games to Edmonton, and Game 7 could have gone either way. It was really first goal wins kind of thing. And once Florida got up, and I believe the game ended 2-1, they played lockdown defense for like the second half of this game, keeping Edmonton to the outside all the time, not giving them any opportunities. An absolute masterclass in team defense there. But that is the playoffs. Quickly, I want to go through the awards. I'll tell you the winners of the awards, and then I'll tell you what they mean, or I will attempt to do so with as many as I can. Starting with the Art Ross Trophy, most points in the season goes to Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Maurice Richard, most goals in a season, goes to Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Calder Memorial Trophy, Rookie of the Year, goes to Connor Bedard of the Chicago Blackhawks. The Vezina Trophy, Best Goalie in the League, goes to Connor Hellebuck of the Winnipeg Jets. Don't tell them about the playoffs. The James Norris Trophy, Best Defenseman in the League, goes to Quinn Hughes of the Vancouver Canucks. The Hart Memorial Trophy, the MVP Trophy, goes to Nathan MacKinnon, and the Ted Lindsay also goes to Nathan MacKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche. Hart Memorial is the MVP. And I believe Ted Lindsay is the MVP as voted by the players. Next, we've got a couple of trophies that I don't know as well, so I will use this article to relay the information. The Marc Messier NHL Leadership Award went to Jacob Trouba, and this award celebrates the best players and coaches from last season. Hold up. This award is for the player who exemplifies great leadership qualities to his team on and off the ice during the regular season and who plays a leading role in the community growing the game of hockey. The Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy goes to Connor Ingram. This trophy is awarded to the player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. And I believe he played, yes, for the Arizona Coyotes, aka the Utah Hockey Club. The Frank J. Selke Award goes to Alexander Barkov, and this goes to the forward who best excels in the defensive aspects of the game. Jack Adams Award, the best coach, goes to Rick Tocchet of the Vancouver Canucks. The King Clancy Memorial Trophy goes to Anders Lee, and this is awarded to the player who best exemplifies leadership qualities on and off the ice and has made a noteworthy humanitarian contribution in his community. The Lady Byng Memorial Trophy went to Jacob Slavin of the Carolina Hurricanes. This is awarded to the player adjudged to have exhibited the best type of sportsmanship and gentlemanly conduct combined with high standard of playing ability. The Jim Gregory General Manager of the Year Award went to Jim Nill of the Dallas Stars, Most Outstanding GM. The Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award for Canada went to Mark DeMontis, and this is awarded to an individual who, through the game of hockey, has positively impacted his or her community, culture, or society. Scrolling through, because we said some of these, the Willie O'Ree Community Award in the U.S. went to Estella Rivas Bryant, to an individual who, through the game of hockey, has positively impacted his or her community, culture, or society. That is for the United States version of that award. And finally, the E.J. McGuire Award of Excellence to the NHL draft prospect who best exemplifies commitment to excellence through strength of character, competitiveness, and athleticism. This went to Michael Hage, or Hage, one of the three. The 2024 draft was one that kind of seemed to sneak up on some of us. Now, all season basically Macklin Celebrini was basically a shoo-in for first overall, but it wasn't like Connor Bedard where we've known for a couple of years. Because Macklin Celebrini played in the NCAA, we didn't hear about him as much, but in 64 games, in 38 games, he had 64 points in the NCAA, winning the Hobey Baker Award. And I believe he was a freshman. He became the youngest player to win the award and the fourth from Boston University. Now, that is Macklin Celebrini to San Jose. At number 2, Chicago picks Artyom Levshunov, a defenseman from Michigan State in the NCAA. The Anaheim Ducks, with the 3rd overall pick, select Beckett Senek, right winger for the Oshawa Generals. At number 4, the Columbus Blue Jackets select Caden Lidstrom, center from Medicine Hat in the WHL. At number 5, Montreal Canadiens do go with the Russian player this year, selecting Ivan Demidov, a right winger from SKA St. Petersburg in the Russian Junior League. At number 6, the Utah Hockey Club select Tej Aginla, center from Kelowna in the WHL. Tej is in fact the son of Calgary Flames legend Jerome Aginla. And Tej looks like he'll be a solid player as well. Solid is putting it lightly for Jerome, I guess. But at number 7, the Ottawa Senators select Carter Yakimchuk, defenseman from the Calgary Hitmen in the WHL. With the 8th overall pick, the Seattle Kraken select Berkeley Catton, a center from Spokane in the WHL. This is the first pick that I was a little upset about. I wanted the Sabres to pick this pick. At number 9, the Calgary Flames select Zane Parekh, defenseman from Saginaw of the OHL. I think Zane Parekh, from what I've heard and his offensive abilities, has the opportunity to be like a Quinn Hughes or a Cale Makar. So Calgary might have gotten a absolute steal here. Only time will tell. I haven't seen him play, but when you get 96 points as a defenseman and have 10 power play goals, 2 shorthanded goals, and 6 game-winning goals as an 18-year-old, and 11 points in 13 playoff games, geez, the dude already has a resume. It says right here the 18-year-old has been compared to Pittsburgh Penguin defenseman Erik Karlsson because of his dynamic offensive skills. With the 10th overall pick, though, the New Jersey Devils select Anton Saleyev, defenseman from Nizhny Novgorod, from the Russian League, the KHL. Not even going to try to say it again. I was going to try, but dude is 6'7", 211 pounds. He looks like an absolute power forward. He had the most points by an under-18 player in the KHL history. Vladimir Tarasenko is second. So, wow, that is kind of nuts. Power forward might be putting it lightly, but a power forward is a good thing to be, especially in today's NHL. With the 11th overall pick, traded from the Buffalo Sabres, the San Jose Sharks select Sam Dickinson, a defenseman from the London Knights of the OHL. With the 12th overall pick, the Minnesota Wild, via trade from Philadelphia, receives Zeev Buum, a defenseman from Denver in the NCAA. At number 13, we get the other side of this trade. The Philadelphia Flyers from Minnesota select Jet Luchenko, a center from Guelph in the OHL. The Buffalo Sabres from the San Jose Sharks, originally belonging to the Pittsburgh Penguins, select Konsta Helenis, a center from Jokerit in the Finnish Hockey League. At number 15, the Detroit Red Wings select Michael Brandstad-Nygaard, a right wing from Mora in the Swedish Second League. At number 16, St. Louis Blues take Adam Juracek, a defenseman from Plzeň in the Czech Republic. Brother of David Juracek of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I was really hoping that the Toronto Maple Leafs would trade up for this guy, or I was really hoping he fell to like 20 and the Sabres would trade for the pick. I like the idea of having a Eurocheck, especially with how good David is. Adam could definitely be a top 4 defenseman in the league. With the 17th overall pick, the Washington Capitals select Tarek Perisket, a right winger from Prince George in the WHL. With the 18th overall pick, the Chicago Blackhawks from the New York Islanders select Sasha Borsford, a center from Muskegon in the USHL. And this guy is 6'2", 183. I had to look because the NHL.com analysis was bringing up shorter guys, 5'10" Bedard, 5'9" Frank Nazar, 5'11" Oliver Moore. And I was like, is this another small guy? 6'2", bigger dude. And at number 19, the Vegas Golden Knights select Trevor Connolly, left winger from Tri-City in the USHL. With the 20th overall pick in the NHL draft, the New York Islanders, from a trade from Chicago, the pick originally belonging to the Tampa Bay Lightning, select Cole Iserman, left winger of the USA U18 team from the USHL. At 21, the Montreal Canadiens select from the Los Angeles Kings, Michael Hague. The award winner Michael Hague, center from Chicago in the USHL. At number 22, the Nashville Predators select Igor Shorin, a center from Yaroslav Jr. in the Russian Junior League. The Anaheim Ducks, with the pick from Toronto, select at number 23 Stian Solberg, defenseman from Vålerenga in Norway. With the 24th overall pick, the Utah Hockey Club, with the pick from Colorado, the Utah Hockey Club select Cole Bodine, center from the Barrie Colts of the OHL. Oh, wow. The 25th overall pick. Wow. Originally belonging to Boston, who then traded it to Detroit, who then traded it to Ottawa, who then traded it back to Boston, select Dean Letourneau, a center from St. Andrews College in the High Ontario League. That was a lot. With the 26th overall pick, the Los Angeles Kings, from a trade from Montreal, who got it from Winnipeg, select Liam Greentree, a right winger from Windsor Spitfire of the OHL. With the 27th overall pick, the Chicago Blackhawks pick again. Originally this draft pick belonged to Carolina, but the Blackhawks select Marek Vanacker, left winger from Brantford in the OHL. At number 28, we find the Calgary Flames again, with the Vancouver Canucks former pick. The Flames select Matvei Gradin, a right winger from Muskegon of the USHL. With the 29th overall pick, the Dallas Stars keep their pick, selecting Emil Hemming, right winger from TPS in the Finnish Hockey League. The 30th overall pick, New York Rangers select, with their own pick, E.J. Emery, defenseman from the USA U18 team in the USHL. The Toronto Maple Leafs at number 31, from Anaheim, originally the pick belonging to Edmonton, select Ben Danford, a defenseman from the Oshawa Generals of the OHL. And finally, the Edmonton Oilers, from Philadelphia, originally belonging to Florida, select Sam O'Reilly, a right winger from the London Knights of the OHL. And that is the entirety of the first round of this year's draft. I wanted to read through them, remind some people of who got taken where. Maybe you learned, like in the Boston trade, that it touched 3 different teams' hands, including starting with and ending with Boston. But in the free agency section, I won't go through every free agent signing here, but I'll go through some of the bigger ones. So, starting with Teuvo Teravainen and Tyler Bertuzzi, signed with the Chicago Blackhawks, giving Connor Bedard some much-needed help. Sean Monahan signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's been being shopped around recently, going from Calgary to Montreal to Winnipeg, and now Columbus. My boy, Jeff Skinner, future Stanley Cup champion, signs with the Edmonton Oilers. Quinton Byfield, when I was writing this, signed a 5-year extension at $6.25 million. Fantastic deal. That deal could be amazing as of next season, but minimum, I think it's going to be an absolute steal by the second season that it kicks in. I think he has 1 more year on his current deal, so definitely when this kicks in, it'll already be an underpayment, barring injury. Nashville went nuts, like I said, signing Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Brady Shea. The San Jose Sharks pick up Tyler Toffoli from the New Jersey Devils. And I think he might have been traded at the trade deadline, if I remember. Maybe he was a Devil when he left. Not sure. Brandon Montour and Chandler Stevenson, both Stanley Cup champions now, signed with the Seattle Kraken, bringing some veteran presence and bringing some Stanley Cup pedigree. Chris Tanev, a defenseman, signs with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Jake DeBrusk and Danton Heinen got up out of Boston and both decided to go to Vancouver. I guess the East Coast wasn't their thing, and they went as far west as possible. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, or Ukko-Pekka Lehkonen, or UPL, or UPI, signs in Buffalo for 5 years at $4.75. It's a re-signing. That is a fantastic deal as of yesterday, as of the day before, as of this season, and it kicks in next season. Fantastic signing by Kevin Adams. This is a steal, just like the other players that he signed around $7.5 million. He's got the team locked up for 5-6 seasons, and hopefully we can take advantage of that in Buffalo. Now, like I said, there have been many signings and re-signings, but these are the ones I saw as being quite large for the teams they join or rejoin. Travis Konechny's deal I would have thrown in here, but that is too recent and I didn't end up getting to put it in my notes. But we get to the final section of this video, which is notable trades throughout the season. I went all the way back to the trade deadline and right before it. We're not going through every trade, but we're going through some of the bigger trades, starting with on July 5th, 2024, the Edmonton Oilers receive Matt Savoy, and Buffalo receives Ryan McLeod and Ty Tullio. July 1st, Ottawa receives Nick Jensen and a 2026 third-round pick. Washington receives Jacob Chychrun. This is a fantastic deal for the Washington Capitals. The Capitals are primed to for sure get back into playoff contention at least. Time will tell if they can. The Metro's got 4 or 5 good teams, and then they got to fight with the Atlantic for those wild card spots. On June 29th, the New Jersey Devils receive Paul Cotter and a 2025 third-round pick, and Vegas receives Akira Schmidt and Alexander Holtz. I think this trade could backfire in New Jersey Devils' face. Akira Schmidt, I really think, can be At worst, a 1B, maybe a solidified backup goalie, but a 1B that can play like 35 games. And Alexander Holtz, watch a couple years from now, that's going to come back to haunt me. Or it's going to come back to like whatever the opposite of haunt is. Validate me, I guess. And Alexander Holtz is like a top 6, middle 6 guy. And Paul Cotter, he has won the Stanley Cup, and there's a 2025 third round pick, but that's an unfortunate loss for the Devils for sure. Also on the 29th, Washington receives goaltender Logan Thompson, and Vegas receives a 2024 third round pick and a 2025 third round pick. On the 29th, Tampa Bay receives a 2024 fourth round pick and a 2025 second round pick, and the Los Angeles Kings receive Tanner Jeannot. Great pickup by the Kings. Maybe they can revitalize. It wasn't a great fit in Tampa Bay for Jeannot, and good on Tampa for getting rid of his contract. Also on the 29th, Arizona receives Mikhail Sergachev, and Tampa Bay receives Connor Geekie, J.J. Moser, a 2025 second round pick, and a 2024 fourth round pick. This is great on both sides. Arizona also is Utah, just reminding. Connor Geekie and J.J. Moser are fantastic prospects. So Tampa Bay is actively getting younger as they're getting older, and that's why I say that they were like the Penguins, but their future is much, much brighter. On the 26th, Chicago receives Ilya Mikheyev, Sam Lafferty, and a 2027 second round pick, while Vancouver receives a 2027 fourth round pick, and they retain 15% on Mikheyev's contract. June 24th, Ottawa receives Linus Ullmark, 25% retained, and Boston receives Jonas Korpisalo, Mark Catalin, and a 2024 first round pick. On June 19th, Washington receives Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Los Angeles receives Darcy Kemper. And I talked about that a few times in the video, so I'm just kind of going to gloss by that one. New Jersey Devils on June 19th traded for Jacob Markstrom. In Calgary received Kevin Ball, a 2025 first round pick, but they did retain 31.25% of Markstrom. Kevin Ball looked like he was going to be a good prospect for them, so now he's going to be a good prospect for Calgary. I mean, hold your breath with this one because Yegor Sharangovich was traded last offseason, and now they trade Kevin Ball and a first round pick. Now, to be fair, they did get retention on Markstrom's deal, so that is a good look. On March 21st, Tampa Bay received Ryan McDonough in a 2024 fourth round pick. Nashville receives a 2025 second round pick and a 2024 seventh round pick. And I believe Nashville paid Tampa Bay, I think Tampa Bay paid Nashville to take McDonough's contract a season or two ago, and now they've just recouped even more assets. They sold high and got a second round pick, so that's huge. On March 8th, Vegas received Tomas Hertl, 17% retained, as well as a 2025 and 2027 third round pick. San Jose received David Edstrom and a 2025 first round pick. I was pissed when I saw this. I can say that as straight-faced as I want. I was super pissed. I can say with a smile on my face, I was super pissed about this. Because this is what happened when Mark Stone went on LTIR. Like I said earlier in the video, they had space on the cap, in their cap, to sign or trade for Tomas Hertl. And that is exactly what they did. Now, Mark Stone's injury was a lacerated spleen. Totally get that. It is the 2025-2027 third round picks that irritate me, because maybe David Edstrom is going to be a great pick. That 2025 first rounder is going to be somewhere between 16 and 32. So maybe this was San Jose doing right by the player and sending Tomas Hertl somewhere he could win. But I was really frustrated when this happened. Now, don't be mad at me. It's a good trade. It's just Vegas was going through some stuff right around there, so. Also, on March 8th, Florida receives Buffalo Sabre legend and now Stanley Cup champion Kyle Okposo, and Buffalo received Kalle Schallin and a 2024 conditional 7th. I don't think they got the 7th, but they got a prospect, I guess. Buffalo wanted to do right by Kyle Okposo, and I'm super glad they did, because now he can wear that badge of honor of being a Stanley Cup champion forever. On March 7th, Carolina received Jake Gensel and Ty Smith. Pittsburgh received Michael Bunting, Ville Koivunen, Cruz Lucius, Vasily Ponomarov, a conditional 2024 first round pick, a conditional 2024 fifth round pick, and they retained 25% of Gensel's contract for the rest of the season. And the contract has now ended, so that is off the books. Ty Smith is kind of rough to lose there, but Michael Bunting and a bunch of younger guys, the Penguins have to get younger any way possible. So I did like this trade on both sides. And Michael Bunting teams back up with Kyle Dubas and Jason Spezza in Pittsburgh. On March 6th, this is a big trade and also a personal trade. Colorado received Casey Middlestad, and Buffalo received Bowen Byram. And I've already talked about that, so as much as I want to fangirl about Bowen Byram, who played excellently in the second half of the season with Buffalo, I'll leave it there. On March 6th, Florida receives Vladimir Tarasenko, and Ottawa receives a conditional 2024 fourth round pick, a 2025 fifth, and they retained 50% of Tarasenko's contract. Big move for Florida. That is now two-time Stanley Cup winner Vladimir Tarasenko. And there were so many trades this season, but this takes us back to around the trade deadline. If you would like to read up on any of these subjects, I will have a lot of the links from the research that I used in the description down below, as well as the link to my hockey channel. There's no content on there yet, but when the regular season starts to ramp up and news comes out, that will kind of be like a reaction channel in ASMR format to news and trades and signings and games as well of the Sabres and the Maple Leafs. And if I catch any other games, because maybe there's some games on national broadcast that I can't find. But with the ending of my notes, it says, "That's it, you may outro and finally sleep." So if you're on desktop, hit subscribe. If you saw that, it lights up whenever YouTubers say subscribe. So I always think that's super cool. If you like this video, hit the like button, share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues, share it with your grandmother. We are 90 subscribers away from 500. That is our next big milestone, and I hope you join the journey. Good night and good luck. I will see you in the next video.